Coffee Q&A live stream, and this morning, it's Friday the 13th. Oh, man, can you believe it? So today I thought we'd go over a little bit of live roasting, let you see how we roast our coffee, and we can talk about different things about the roasting process and whatnot. So we've got here the roaster, which is a 1970s era, well, it could be late 70s, early 80s, Petroncini, the Chrome roaster. And it's a 3-kilo roaster that we put about, that we used. And it's a great roaster. It's a gas-fired drum roaster that has been a workhorse for us. We first got this in 2008. I've had this since that time, and we've made some modifications to it. We added some magnet helix as well as other different monitoring sources. When I first started to learn how to roast, or when I first got this roaster, Marty Curtis, hopefully you can hear me with the noise in the room, and I'm shooting from an iPhone today. But a good friend of mine, Marty Curtis, who's an expert in coffee roasting and roasters, he came down from a job that he was doing in New York City, and he was like, help me set it up. And I was like, hey man, what about the beam probe, right? But there's a beam probe over here. And he was like, oh no, bud, you gotta learn how to roast first by using just the gauge. And I was like, what? Oh man. I had originally had some experience with a Probot UG22 that had, probes and stuff like that. So I was used to roasting with probes, but Marty was like, no man, you gotta learn how to use this. Learn how to make good coffee using just your exhaust temperature, and then everything falls into place. Fast forward 8 years to 2016, and I finally got a probe. I took the plate off, had it drilled out at a machine shop, and then installed it, and we've been using digital readouts ever since. We're using a pretty simple application called Coffee Snobs. This is really something I think that's been geared towards, geared towards consumer roasters. People that are running beam wars and stuff like that. A bunch of guys down in Australia created this, and I know a lot of my friends and people in the industry, my contemporaries, they use things like Cropster, and those are great programs, especially if you have larger enterprises where you need to keep track of a variety of different things over a larger scale. Here at Spro, we're pretty small, so we don't need all that capability and tools to manage the business, so it doesn't really make any sense for us to spend that kind of money for that kind of capabilities. And this really manages pretty much everything that we need. We're getting closer. I just have to monitor what we're doing. So as you can see, we're preheating we're heating up the roaster. I'm waiting for the exhaust temperature to reach about 200, 210 degrees Celsius. So everything we're talking about here is in Celsius. Why do we roast in Celsius when the rest of America roasts in Fahrenheit? Mainly because when I got the roaster, this was in Celsius, and that was pretty much it. It's either learn in Celsius or don't learn at all. And also one thing that we use here, we use a basic chart here for, it's really just a roast log to keep track of what we're roasting. So let me fill this. Today's out. Today is the 13th. So 1/13, 23. And then we try to track here, what is our temperature, humidity, and so I have a little weather station in here. So basically our barometric pressure is 1002, 35% humidity, and interior temperature in the roastery today is 59 degrees. So I kind of keep that here on the top of the sheet mainly just to give us some reference points to see are there many differences between roast performance between winter, summer, and different, whatever season that we may be roasting in. Also, if you have any questions about roasting or coffee, just drop them in the comments. I will do what I can to answer them as they come in. All right, let me just, we're just passing 200 on our roast profile. Let me just fill up some coffee. So what we do is we fill up the coffee. For a typical batch for this roaster, we're using 4.5 pounds of green coffee. And let me reset this. Reset our computer here. Again, almost at 215. So here's our green. So what do we record on our roast log? As you can see, we have our coffee, which this is our house coffee, batch number 1. Start time at 10:37. Batch size is 4 pounds 5 ounces, 4.5 pounds, sorry. And then our start temperature is 215 degrees Celsius. Now, we do have other spaces here in case we want to track them. For, what does that say, first crack, yellow, turn time, yellow, first crack, second crack, drop. For the most part, I don't normally fill these center portions out unless I'm really trying to track some kind of issue that we may be looking for. I just don't bother with it. As you roast, you have to use your senses, and I took a pause there for a moment because I thought I smelled something burning. Now, one of the things about the burning is, I don't think it's really burning, maybe it could be, but one thing that you have to be prepared for with coffee roasting is potential for fire. And it's typically a question of not if, but when. So what you always want to do is, you don't want to, first of all, you don't want to feed the fire, meaning that you don't, if in case you do get into a fire situation, don't give the fire more oxygen. You want to try to starve the fire from the oxygen, should that happen. So, for example, if you were to have overheating inside the drum, you don't want to open the door to let more air in and then ignite the coffee that's inside. So, just want to cut off the flame, cut off the fan, and just kind of let it roll. Let it roll. Thomas says it's very easy to avoid fire escapes by dropping a first crack. And that is a possibility. But sometimes things happen. I'll tell you, the last fire I had was 5 years ago. In February, actually it was Valentine's Day 2015. Valentine's Day 2018. We had just moved here. I had just finished reinstalling the machine here. Everything was brand new and really pretty. And, you know, I was doing a regular roast, and I was packaging coffee. And, you know, sometimes you just lose track. I just lost track of what I was doing and was so preoccupied with packaging that I forgot the roaster. And by the time I came back, it was probably right around 300 Celsius, which was like way too hot. And I got a little bit, I'll be honest, I got a little bit panicky. I shut off the gas. I had the hose nearby, but for some reason I was like, I gotta get it out. Pop that door open, the whole thing exploded. Literally, the system exploded. And you see the stack here, right here? Blew that off, and a large fire was raging here. Fire was shooting out of the chaff collector. And I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. And so luckily, you know, we've got a lot of firefighting equipment here. Extinguishers within reach, hoses within reach. And so I was able to hose down the roaster. And the nice thing about these roasters is that they're pretty bulletproof. You know, it's basically steel, and basically I just had to tear it all apart and clean it up and re-lube it and then put it back together, and we're ready to go the next day. But it was a pretty hairy situation. So you want to remember, that's why you always have to try to keep in mind that this is what you need to do in case something catches fire. Now in the case of like Thomas said, with the chaff fires, you know, so if we have a chaff fire in the chaff collector over here, there it is. It's more just a matter of keeping it contained. For the most part, I'll let it burn out because it's not really a threat to operations. Now, in the piping, we do keep the piping fairly clean on a regular basis, so that's pretty safe. The only other concern would be like if you don't do your proper maintenance on the stacks, the exhaust stacks, then creosote can build up inside the stacks, and it has a dual effect. As the creosote builds, the diameter of your stack becomes smaller, causing, you know, it's making the roaster work hard to force the air out, making your roast less efficient. And should those creosotes somehow decide to combust, that can be something that could be very building threatening, because it is, once creosote catches fire, it could burn through the tubing, even double layer tubing. It could burn through that. If it's really bad, it could burn through that. And then it could proceed to burn down your facility, depending on how severe the incident is. And so what we're trying to do, we want to have, let's go back to our roasting. Let's look at our roasting curves here. So as you can see here, we've got our roast curve. We had the rise, there's a slight rise here, if you can see that. Hopefully you can see that. And then it drops because as we added the coffee, the temperature drops. And the temperature equalized at 92.8 Celsius. More or less about a minute and a half into the, or about just about a minute. So we were about here, and then we started a minute into the roast. And then we're having a relatively gradual, it had a little bit of a peak here. Not too worried about that. And then now we're kind of into this slow climb. Right now we're at 172.8, and we're past the yellowing stage and going into the Maillard reaction phase. So the first run of the day is usually, or the first run of the batch is one that I usually pay a lot more attention to because I just want to see how will the coffee, how should I be expecting the coffee to perform today? So we're at 180 degrees. We're getting close to first crack. Actually, first crack is just starting. Yeah, it's just starting now. We're at 183 degrees. Now for this coffee, I like to take it past first crack and stop, and we start to drop it before second crack. So how do we calculate that? On an average basis, we're calculating that by listening to the first crack. When first crack finishes, then we kind of calculate maybe about 40 seconds longer, and then we drop, which should drop us right before second crack. I like to have a little more development in this coffee. Like here is we're in the middle of first crack now. What's up, Yellow? How are you, man? Good to see you. This is in the middle of first crack now. Now this is kind of right around the range where we're going to stop it for a cupping roast, mainly because we're roasting it for cuppings to give us more, to roast the coffee, but also not mask the coffee of any of its defects. Yeah, we're still in the middle of the first crack now. Oh, I'm doing well, man. How are you doing? Good to see you, yo. Good to see you. So now, we're still in the middle of the first crack. It's I don't know if you can hear this. You probably can, but it's still cracking. It's slowing down now. So I'm going to look at the timing. We're at 10 minutes, 55 seconds. I'm going to estimate we're going to finish maybe closer to 11:30, 11:40. Because we're still getting a rolling cracking going on. Now I keep this weight on the arm only because sometimes it doesn't have enough weight to keep the door closed. All right, we're just about there. 210, we're gonna stop at 210. 210, 11:41. This one, oddly enough, didn't really stop cracking. All right, so there it is. We dropped our load. Oops. I should show you that. And I am stirring it around. It is a little bit on the darker side. I would say we probably dropped it right at the second crack. Because in this case, we really had a running crack the whole time. So sometimes you'll have beans that will run their cracking nonstop. Now you'll notice that I've added a water bath, water spray to this, mainly because we wanted to, let me just enter the 210, 11:41. Mainly because, we did that mainly because we don't have stirrers anymore. and it just helps to drop the temperature quickly. And now we're starting to get some haze in here because of the smoke. There's always extra smoke that comes in, so what I'm going to do is open the garage doors. Yeah, there we go. Once I open the garage doors, it's a lot more evident how much more smoky it is. All right, let me just enter some of these data points. And then start the next roast. Okay, good. That takes care of that. One thing you always have to do is try to keep ahead of your production. Now, at the end of the last roast, I noticed that there's a little bit of smoke coming out of the chaff collector. That seems to have dissipated. And so let's have a look at our coffee from our last batch. Now, the idea behind this particular coffee is for one of our clients that has, fairly regular clientele, meaning that they're looking for a coffee that is very accessible to most people. And we try to find a coffee that will work for that, giving a lot of chocolate notes, some nuttiness, really familiar flavors that are very clean and really of high quality, but also aren't at crazy price points and are at roast profiles that people will enjoy. And so that's kind of the criteria for this particular coffee. And we've been working with this client now for almost 2 years, and they've been very happy with the coffee and the quality of service we provide. So that's been really great. It's also a little bit difficult for a shop like us, a company like us. We're very quality focused, and we're not really buying lower price coffees, right? Like the coffees that we serve, even like this coffee, while it's a very approachable flavor profile, it's also a level of quality that we would serve in our own operations, to our own guests. So it's not like we're buying coffees that are of lesser quality in order to meet whatever the customer desires. Now this customer of ours, they're a great operation, and we've known them for many years, and so we only service one of their locations, and that's something that they over the years we've had discussions, and it took them a while to get to the point where they really understood what we were about and what we would provide for them, and for them to also have an approach that was matching with our own. Right? So they wanted to provide a level of quality of coffee in their operations that was definitely higher than other units in their operation, and that's what we work with. Perhaps we'll get them to switch to the other locations, but that's to come up. Now in this phase of the, you see the doors open now, so that means that it usually gets pretty cold. That's one thing about our operations here, is that we've got a good space, but we do use the doors a lot. So winters they can be pretty cold, summers it can be pretty hot. Like in the summertime, you don't want to roast bare-chested, and you certainly don't want to leave your tummy up against the rim of the cooling tray after you've dumped the load. I've heard you will get a little bit of a burn across your tummy. At least a friend told me that. All right, so basically what we do is we try to keep the cooling just with air, and just airflow alone. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. If I missed your, I don't know if I can, it doesn't, the thing, I'm using YouTube's phone app to do the live stream, and it doesn't stack the comments, so if I missed it, my apologies. Feel free to drop another comment again if I missed a question. The one nice thing about the winter time, since it's much colder here, like right now it's 59 degrees, or now it's getting cooler because the door's open, and there's days when it's 90 plus in here, so it's a lot easier to roast comparatively, and especially to cool in this kind of environment. One of the things is that I'm monitoring what's going on. Like the screen here shows me the roast profile. So if there's something really untoward, I'll see it. But for the most part, I'm really not doing too much. Really, like you might have seen some people out there, and they're always checking. They're always doing this. For the most part, the roast will continue. I know the roaster well enough that I know how it's going to pack, how it's going to perform. And I'm not, it usually doesn't give me any kind of surprises. So as I'm working with the roaster, talking to you, maybe doing a little packaging, I will be looking regularly here at the monitor to see just what's going on and does it need my attention. And also, like I said earlier, as I was walking back and forth, I smelled the emergence of the burning from the chaff collector. So you're always engaging with your senses while you're roasting. Listening, hearing, smell, everything about it in order to gauge, is everything going to plan? If it's not, then you could be in trouble. All right, let me just get this coffee out of here. So we're just going to take the coffee and drop it down into this bucket. there's our coffee now. Now I'm going to go and weigh it to see how much coffee we have left, or how much coffee is in the roast. All right, so now we've got 3.66 pounds. So 3 points. Whoa, what's going on, Mom? How are you, man? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We're doing some live roasting. So that batch, we recorded 3.66 pounds, which when you convert it into percentage, or you divide that into the original batch. So what we do is we take that 3.66, divide that into 4.5, which is our start green weight, and then that gives us 80.8133, which is 19% loss. Now that's 19%, which is on the high side. So what we're looking for typically is about 16% weight loss between what we roast and what we get out. That's pretty much, if you're right around 16, that's pretty much where we like to be. That's pretty much what we're used to being. 19 is getting a lot. So we probably had a lot of heat. We drove a lot of it out, went a little bit longer. Of course, the darker you roast, the more water, more moisture you're driving out of it, the more, which in turn equals the weight that you're driving out of it. Oh. All right, 211. All right, so now we got the 211. Oh, that's a lot. Now that the doors are open, I'm just gonna not worry so much about the haze. But as you can see, there's a lot of haze. A lot of times when I'm working in the roastery in situations like this, I will wear a ventilator. I'm not doing that today because I was talking here on the live stream. A lot of times I'll also wear a ventilator or just a respirator to cut down on a little bit of the smoke, because typically if it's like this, I'll actually walk out of the building, so I'm not standing here dying of the smoke. Also, I gotta admit, it's a little more challenging today to roast because I'm talking to all of you. So there's like a lot of distraction going on. But anyway, so what was I saying about the roast? This one's looking kind of dark. I mean, it's about the same roast profile, but as you can also, as you can see here, this roast reached 210 degrees, and we're only at 10 minutes. We're at 10:01 on the drop here, whereas the roast before that, we had the same temperature at 11:41. So there was an extra minute and 40 seconds before we hit this point, and that's something to consider. Like, it's getting a little bit fast. I think we'll want to slow down the heat. I'm going to bring it down to 4.5 column inches. All right, let's start the next one on, let's see this. It has cooled down a bit, so it'll take a moment for it to recover. Again, we want to start about 215 Celsius, which is somewhere around 415, 420, I don't know. But like I was saying earlier, just a few minutes ago, about the smoke. One of the things I installed at this when we opened this roaster was this hood, and it's got an extraction fan on it, and it works fairly decently. However, the coverage area isn't as big as I would like it to be. Like I want the coverage area. Oh. All right, let me reload this. I'll be right back. So what I was saying about the screen up here, the exhaust, this works fairly well. This is of course designed for the home. The local Sears was closing back several years ago, and this cost me $10 just for the hood itself. So I bought that, and then I rigged all of the plumbing for it separately, and it works fairly well. The problem is it just doesn't have enough coverage area, right? It's pretty small compared to this area. I thought it would be enough, but really, smoke will kind of go behind it, around it, depending on if the doors are open and the wind currents, stuff will move around. And so it's a little bit irritating in that respect. But at some point in time, we're planning on getting a new roaster. We're looking to move to a 12 kilo, and that will necessitate us to redo all of this as well. So. Yeah, there it is. All right, let me work on some housekeeping while you guys can check out the roaster. All right, so if you have any questions, of course, about roasting or coffee, let me know. I'm very interested to hear what you think. Unfortunately, there's no way for me to look at I don't think there's a way for me to look at previous messages. Let me see, live chat, is that working? Oh, there we go, there's a way to do it. Okay, excellent. Okay, we've got all that. Okay, good. There is a way to overlay that so I can see it. Excellent. I'm glad. The things you learn every day. So one of the things I mentioned that this coffee is for a client who wants something that's really accessible for a wide range of people, and that's kind of why we go for a little bit of a darker profile. A little bit more of a medium city plus roast, because I think that introduces a lot of the Maillard reaction, a lot of the caramelization of the sugars, and really just brings out a nice flavor that people will find accessible. Whereas I think a lot of if we take let's say we take like a natural processed coffee and did it really light, like just past first crack, that can have really beautiful tones. However, the problem is that not everyone may like that. That tends to be for a smaller subset of people. Kind of like, there are those people who like the Michelobs, the Pilsners, or not the pilsners, and I don't really know beer. I'm trying to correlate something I don't really understand, but you know, they like more of that wheat tone, right? That's me. When it comes to beers, I'm a wheat tone kind of person. I'm not a hops guy. You know, and while hoppy beers are really popular overall, they're still for a smaller subset of the beer population. Much like I think that these light, bright coffees are more for a smaller subset of the coffee drinking sphere. So when it comes to something that we're looking to develop for a wider audience, it's typically going to be in that city plus range. Because no matter how much we may not like the idea of Dunkin' Donuts and all those other companies making coffees, their roast profiles are in that range, and so people will find identity in it. They can identify easier with those roast profiles. So about 5 minutes into the roast, we got 167. Which is somebody's thing. The chats have gone away. Mom likes the dark roast. Excellent. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about dark roast. Some people really enjoy them. You know, when I remember when we first started out, we were very much an anti-dark roast house, right? We were like, no dark roasts. We're gonna buy great coffee, and we're only gonna roast it light or medium. And then, well, as we were operating, we would have a lot of, I don't know about a lot, but a significant number of guests would come in and they would be like, hey, do you have any dark roast? Do you have dark roast? Do you have dark roast? No, I'm afraid we only have medium roast. No, do you have dark roast? And so people would buy our coffee regardless of what roast profile was, but there was always someone asking for it. And you know, roasting coffee is an imprecise science that is foiled by someone like myself, right? Like distractions or whatever will happen, and sometimes I will lose control of a roast. I had to say it. I'm not perfect with that. So one day I'm roasting the coffee, distraction. I look back, oh man, drop the coffee out, it's dark. A little bit of oils, right? Dark. You know, this is coffee we're buying for $6.75 a pound. It's high quality coffee. And you know, the hardcore people in the business, they're always like, I just throw that away. And it's like, I'm not throwing $6.75 coffee away. That's crazy. Right? This is like it was 86 point coffee, I think it was, for $6.75 is how much I paid. And I'm not going to throw a batch of that away just because it's outside of our ideal profile. So I was like, you know what, forget it. I'm going to bring it to the shop. And if a customer comes in, they're like, do you have dark roast? Well, actually, today we do. And that's kind of how our dark roast started. And so we started, and they were so enthusiastic about the dark roast, which they should be because it was, you know, really high quality coffee. That from that point on, we wouldn't do this on a weekly basis, but every once in a while, we would roast up coffee using, you know, that coffee or similar grade coffee, like high quality coffee, and we kind of dark it roasted. And people loved it. But really, the thing that I started thinking about, why shouldn't they love it? Because, you know, a lot of people will talk about dark roast and how, you know, you're burning all the flavor out of it. That's not true. You can totally taste a lot of the, if you're using high quality coffee, you're still going to taste a higher level of quality even though the roast is dark. The only time that changes The only time that'll change is when you roast it like this. And this is not dark roasted anymore. Like this is light, fluffy, airy. This is what I would call charcoal. And literally, this is now charcoal. I had a batch that, oh no, this was the batch from the 14th, I think. From February 2018 when the roaster caught on fire. But once if you get the charcoal, all right. So we've reduced if you get the charcoal, that's not going to have any nuance. But if you use quality coffee and roast it dark, people will notice. People, especially dark roasters, they can tell the difference because that's what they use. That's what they're used to. And when they taste that really nice coffee that's darkly roasted, they're going to be like, whoa, that's really something, and that's worth them coming back again and again. All right, we're at 205, 10 minutes, 15 seconds. I lowered the temperature, or I lowered the pressure down to 4.5, just under 4.5 column inches of pressure. So that's given us a little bit more of extension of a roast time, whereas the second roast really was just super fast at 10 minutes. I like to see the roast extend out to about almost 11. So here we are, 210 at 10:45. Okay, that's good. Now you notice I'm water quenching the coffee. And you might be like, why are you doing that? Water quenching is used in a lot of levels of coffee roasting. And some of the large capacity machines, the water quenching actually happens inside the drum. I'm using the water quenching here just as a method to help reduce the temperature of the coffee rapidly. You want to reduce the coffee temperature from its roasted drop temperature down to a temperature where you can actually touch it and hold it. You want to do that within 4 minutes. And because this doesn't have stirs, and because the fan on it isn't as strong, this just aids in that. And while it's not as critical to do that in times like this when it's pretty chilly, especially during the summer when it's really hot, that helps tremendously to keep. What they say is that if you take too long to cool your coffee, you'll get a bit of fade in the flavor. I don't know if I've really had that experience. I've never really tested it either. There are some things, there are some bits of knowledge that we adhere to that I will kind of defer to experts that I know in the field, people that have been doing this much longer than I have. All right, let's get this fourth roast started up. This is going to be the last roast of our session. So if you're just joining us or didn't see the early part, what I like to do is I start the temperature, I start the roast based on the exhaust temperature here, and then I'll finish the roast based on the bean probe reading, which the bean probe is right here. And typically for this roast, since we're going to like more of a city plus roast, we start at 215 Celsius on the exhaust gas temperature. Now, why do I do it that way? It's just what I'm used to. You could use the bean probe, although the bean probe may not be as accurate, or not accurate, but the key is to consistent methods, regardless of how you're doing it. So I could use the beam probe to register the temperature that we're going to start. I would just have to correlate that to whatever this was. But I find that the exhaust temperature gives a lot of information because it's the actual temperature of the air flowing out of the roaster. So that gives a good representation when the beans are not in there, what the ambient temperature of the drum should be. Our second batch came in at 3.65 pounds, which isn't much of an improvement. You know, you might think at the moment that 16% or 19% weight loss versus 16% weight loss, not too big of a deal. It's only 3%. And yeah, maybe on that approach to it, maybe it's not too big of a deal. However, when you think about it over the course of your entire year, that 3% variation, you know, depending on the size of your operations, could be hundreds of thousands of pounds. So you want to understand why you're getting variations. Like we're getting 19%. I would like to see it at 16. I think that might not be possible because of the way they're roasting the coffee. It's a little bit darker. It's coming on pretty heavy. But those are the things to consider because it will cost you longer. It will cost you more to produce that coffee, right? Because now you're getting less yield and you're not really changing your pricing based on what you're roasting that day. So if you're selling your coffee, let's say $10, and you now have 3% loss, 3%, you have 3%, which means you have 3% less coffee. You know, there's 3 cents, right? Is that right? Yeah, 3 cents, and so that's, or 30 cents, and that just and over time that will translate into, you know, less profitability. And then on the other side of it is that if you're having 3% greater loss, right, so you'll be running through your coffee faster, right? So you'll have to order more in order to fulfill the same amount. Not such a big deal when you're a home roaster roasting a few pounds a month, but as you move, if you're on the commercial side of things, then it can become something to really concern yourself about. Especially if you're a roaster that is selling your coffee at tighter margins. But the interesting thing is a lot of the commercial guys that I've known, their margins are very thin because it's such a competitive market, and they're buying cheap coffee and selling it at cheap prices. So the margins are very thin, but their volume can be significant. So, and that's where they make the greater amounts of money than most of us on the specialty side. We do it for love, they do it for Wall Street. I'll let you decide who's more foolish. All right, so roast is rolling along. We're about 4 minutes into it. We're just getting to the, I think we're getting to the first, we're getting past the drying phase. So right here is where the coffee starts to change color from green to yellow. Yeah, now it's starting to get the yellowing going on. We're also starting to get kind of this grassy hay aroma, which actually is my favorite aroma in through the phases of the roasting process. For some reason, I just find that really comforting. Now, one thing that just happened is I dropped a couple beans into the fat, so I gotta make sure these go back. So if you have any questions, of course, drop them in the comments below. Nothing new, nothing good. And if you happen to be watching the replay, if you have any questions about coffee roasting or comments, drop them in the comments down below as well. We do our coffee Q&A live stream every once in a while. There's no real set schedule. Just kind of when I have something that I want to share with you guys, and or techniques we talk about. So we cover techniques, competition, just different aspects of coffee. But if you have ideas and suggestions for videos, let me know. I'm happy to hear more about what you'd like to see. Now we're going to get our coffee out here. It feels relatively cool. Something that just occurred to me as I was doing this. I imagine that a company like Illy or something has made a study about these cooling times and the rapidity of the cooling, how that may potentially impact the flavor. Should we be looking for particular times and particular drop curves? And is there an ideal temperature that we should be gunning for to store the coffee? I don't know. All right, that's a little bit better. 3.69 pounds. Which gives us 18, so that's a bit of an improvement. What else is there to tell you about roasting? I don't know. I think roasting overall is fairly straightforward. Most things in coffee, I think, are very straightforward. We have a way to make it more complex. But at the end of the day, it's a very simple process. I mean, I have a video on the Spro Coffee channel where we're doing roasting in a pan. You could roast coffee in a pan. You don't need to have this equipment. What this equipment does is allows you to roast in quantity. But most coffee roasting, a lot of coffee roasting done around the world is in pans or some kind of metal object in a small quantity over open flame. But if you're interested in roasting your own coffee at home, you don't really need to buy any kind of machinery. You've probably got a pan at home you can use, like a cast iron. I think in the video we did the roasting with either with just a basic aluminum pan or maybe it was a anodized coated aluminum. I don't think we did it. Yeah, I would not have done it with a non-stick because the heat temperatures probably would exceed the non-stick coating and cause, vapor release and, not pleasant results. All right, we're 195 at 9 minutes 45 seconds. So good, we're keeping the roast profile a little bit elongated. As you can see here is the profile. Hope you can see that. May not be as clear. But we had a, sharper down and a nice cut, a little bit of a bump and smoothing out. I'm not so concerned about having perfectly smooth lines, mainly because sometimes the probes will mess up and have irregular readings, so the graph may not look as good. What I'm looking for is the overall smoothness of the curve. Is it, relatively the same? All right, 202, 10 minutes, 31. This one's taking a little bit longer. Our last batch finished 210 at 10:45. We're passing now 10:45 at 2:04. Just a little bit longer for this one. I think part of that has to do with the ambient temperature of the roastery. Now that the door is open, it's gotten cooler here, so that's affecting the way the drum is heating. Because our pressure delivery of the gas has been relatively stable. Maybe there's a little bit of fluctuation. All right, we're at 10:05, 210, 11:25. Yeah, just at the very start of first round, second round. See if there's anything said. All right, so there's a bit of roasting here of coffee for you. That is a roasting of our coffee from Huehuetenango that we have here that we're using for one of our clients. Thought you'd be interested in seeing a little bit of the roasting. If you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. Let me know what you think. I'm happy to hear about that. And I think that's going to do it because I still have a bit more to roast, but I do need to pay more attention to that. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you spending the time with me. I hope this is informative for you. If you have any questions, again, let me know. And yeah, see you next time.